All right, so let's talk about segmenting. In the last presentation, we talked about signaling, right, where you use various methods to aid student processing of information. But students also need time to integrate new information. Now, in your classes, you may already have a rhythm, right? A rhythm that allows students to do this. You plow through 10 minutes of presentation, and then you go to discussion, right? You allow the students to digest that, right? You slow down before you speed up again and you go back into presentation, right? You build these cycles, these natural cycles of presentation. And even when people lecture straight through, right? If they're doing a 45-minute lecture, you'll often find that within the lecture, you have some dense material here, and then you have some lighter material, and then some denser material. You're building in a sort of a rhythm and a flow where students have some time to digest, process, and integrate new information. It's not just all fire hose, right? So we break up, when we segment, we break up into smaller videos, and that kind of forces the students to pause. And sometimes what we do is in between those pauses, we put little activities like, we might put a quiz in there, or we might put an opportunity for reflection, right? So that's segmenting. Now, the question always comes up immediately, what's the best amount of time for a video? How long should a video be? And I will tell you that the people that run MOOCs think they have the answer. They think the answer is 6 minutes, just because they start to see that students, up until about 6 minutes, they finish a video, and then completion of that video falls off, right, at about 6 minutes, right? You start to see this drop in the number of students that finish that video. Okay, that's really useful, and I think 6 minutes is not a bad target for some of these things. But it varies. It varies depending on what you need to do, right? And so, in general, I just advise people, go for somewhere between 3 and 15 minutes. See how it works out. A lot of times, you just have a concept that's just going to take a little more than 6 minutes, right? And a lot of times, you have a concept that's going to take less than 6, right? So you need some flexibility, but you still want to keep it short. That said, there are some situations where you don't really control the length. So for example, we're talking right now about this idea of high flex. Maybe you've heard this term, right? So high flex is where you have a face-to-face class, right? This is your face-to-face class, and you offer it maybe synchronously on Zoom at the same time, but you also offer a recording, right? And students can watch the recording at their own convenience, right? And it's a sort of a powerful, right? It can be a powerful methodology, but in that case, you do have this, you do end up having like this hour-long recording. So what do you do in that case? Well, it's really about the principle, right? Segmenting is really about giving students opportunities to reflect, to process, to integrate new information. So you can actually, you have this long class here, you can just actually, as you're offering the class, you can tell the students to pause and process. So for instance, if you're delivering this in a face-to-face classroom and being recorded, about 10 minutes in, just turn to the camera and say, hey, for those of you watching this at home, I'd love your thoughts on this subject. Open up your reflection journal and let me know what you think about this, right? You can say, about 20 minutes in, if you could add to that journal or go to this discussion board and tell me what the most important thing you got out of this particular session was. You just give the students the prompt that you want them to pause and reflect on. And what you can also say to the students, since that discussion, right, the discussion that happens in the classroom is maybe not particularly useful to them, they're doing their processing, not through discussion, but they're doing their processing through reflecting in the journal. You can say, after you reflect in your journal, you can jump up to the next part of the presentation and start from there, right? They don't have to go through the same reflection process as the class if they're doing it online in an asynchronous part, right? So that is segmenting, right? That is segmenting in asynchronous, where we divide up these videos and build in little quizzes. That's segmenting in high flex, where we make sure we're providing students online a prompt to pause and opportunities to reflect within this larger course. That's really that's really all there is to it. We're going to do our last subject, which is weeding. That is coming up next.